Oh yeah, thank you very much for staying until now and also listening to me. I've been on stage. I told you one story of the talk. Hopefully, I will bring up some new aspect of how we should think about security in the new era that we live right now, in the new era of technology, as well as what are the things that we probably should do. Just a disclaimer that there will be a lot of content and words that you may know or may not know. Don't worry about them. There is an intention of writing a comprehensive blog of this talk, including adding all the tools that I will talk or I may not talk today, or suggestion later on Talsec blog post. So then don't worry about not or forgetting about what I'm saying, because I will probably talk very fast and there will be a lot of content. Well, let's see. Who am I? My name is Majid. I'm actually flying from Oslo, from Norway here today, well, yesterday actually. And this year I work as a solution engineer at Microsoft. And my work at Microsoft, as all the other Microsofties, is to work on security. Every single person in Microsoft is responsible to work on security. No exception. Every single person in Microsoft, and we have over 200,000 employees. So that is where we put our effort in Microsoft to say security above all. And security is actually above all in my company. But today, I'm not coming to represent Microsoft at all. This is my hobby. I'm a passionate security techie. So I've been with Talsec and with these folks for some years. I do love to contribute to security community, especially the app part. And that's why I'm here. And hopefully, I will bring you some new perspective of how we should think of the security. I had a hard time to shape this talk to see like whether it should be technical or non-technical, to keep the balance. Hopefully, it's not too technical and not too boring. Let's see how it goes. Mobile attacks has increased 29% in H1 2025. Just think about it. 30% increase just in one quarter. And around 85% of organizations report more frequent incidents today. Probably your companies is one of them as well. And the interesting part is that the AI threat has increased since 2023, 35%. And it's increasing even more every day. It's getting even more complex. So we're actually facing we are actually thinking about or facing a new era of mobile security. So, and there are three core pillars to this reshaping of the mobile security. So two of them are pretty familiar to most of us. Like we know the velocity problem. So compared to, how many of you are developer for the last 10 years in mobile era? Don't tell me I'm the oldest in the room. You know that 10 years ago, it was not quite often to ship every day one version of the mobile app, probably. It might not be still the case, but it's much more frequent to build and deploy your applications, whether it's a web or mobile application as well. In fact, we have some companies that they adapted the DevOps and DevSecOps mindset, which we're going to talk about it, and they're actually building a couple of times and shipping a couple of times per day even. So that's the first thing, like getting things done and ship fast. The second one is the invisible supply chain. Where we are I am a developer. I've been a developer for a long time. And sometimes developers living in some kind of illusion that they are building software themselves, where this is correct. But if you look at the software composition, what you're doing, what you're building, is that probably around 80% of your code is composed from other people's code, from other dependencies, other things that you're using to build your software. That's another thing. And the third one, which is quite new, yes. And the third one is, there you go. No, too fast. And the third one is the AI, obviously. There was a lot of good discussion in the panel before Sergey's talk, and I want to actually summarize some of them in this talk as well. Very good points. And with AI, I mentioned also in the panel in the morning, if you've been there, that there is an increase of around 2,000% on AI threat attacks on mobile applications. Okay, these numbers, why I'm saying these numbers? Because we need to shift our think about security if you have not done that already. The paradigm has shifted. And that's where my talk goes today. Where we are and how we should shift this and how we should think about it as we go, and what are the strategies. I gave these examples in the morning, so where a deep fake attack was in fact caused the company to transfer $25 million. There is another example which is in fact addressing, or not addressing, like targeting one of the OWASP mobile top 10, which is inadequate supply chain security, where a company, or what was the name of the public sector health not the public sector, sorry, one of the health sector or companies in US, United Healthcare. So they've been building software using some vendors, and the vendor were attacked. But that vendor was actually used in many other systems in the US health sector. And when that vendor was attacked, the entire system were attacked. Not even those that just use that vendor as a trusted vendor. There is no such a thing anymore as trusted, right? So trust, but verify. All right. I'm saying this just because these top 10 risks are not just on the paper. These are actually happening every day. The fact that they're not attacking us, or it's still not facing to us, that doesn't mean they don't exist. They're just there for the sake of being in the top 10 list for checkbox. So this is where we need to think a bit different. We used to have these, castle building software and the gates for security. It was mentioned about penetration testing. While you get to penetration testing, it's fantastic, but that's end of the line. You already passed, you already shipped. Too late. Well, it's nice to recognize and fix it, but still too late. The cost of finding things in production is way higher than shifting the idea to the left, to when you are developing. The fact that we think about network security only, if you have TLS, if you have secure in transit or not even in transit data, then we're fine. That's too old. 2024. Today you need to think different. The fact that our devices are trusted. How many of you actually think your iPhone is safe? Don't be shy. We all think our mobile devices are safe. This is assumption. There is no assumption. Nothing is safe. That's all these problems actually come from these simple facts that we are living with them every day. So that's where we need to shift our these paradigm, let's say, from simply thinking about perimeter security options to be more of runtime defense. We talked about it, right? To be more of validating, verifying everything on runtime as well. We need to shift from making a gate to pass the security, rather to make it as a guard race on every step that we're building the application. We need to just also change our culture. The culture inside the company, I mentioned also in the panel, I actually believe we need to invest on that, establish the mindset of security for every single person in the company. And then also from a trust by default to a continuous verification. That's the paradigm that is going to be shifted. So we should not think that security is a blocker anymore. In fact, security is an enabler. If we shift this mindset, then we get into some of these paradigms or architecture designs or things that we have, like for example, DevSecOps, where you implement security in every single step of your software development lifecycle. And we get to that right now. In fact, we get to the strategies right now. Sorry. The concept of zero trust is there forever. So people know that from the web. You probably have worked with that. We're going to focus on zero trust for mobile. The zero trust actually comes with 3 different pillars. So it's about verification explicitly. We talked about it right now. It's about least privilege. So in fact, no access until you know how you should give that access. And then it's about assumed breaches. So what should you do if in case something happens, because it will? You're going to make that hard, but that doesn't mean it will not happen, right? So let's talk about that on mobile particularly. In mobile is a bit different. So in mobile, the zero trust means always verify. But that in mobile usually happens in runtime. You do a lot of things on build time as well, but always verification on runtime. And there are different things you can do. There were a lot of discussion today. I'm just going to point out some of them. So the runtime protection, like RASP that we talked about it. The device trust, never trust any device. There will be, or there might be some devices that is jailbreaked or something like that. Making sure about the identity, all the time verify. Every single request needs to be verified. On server, in mobile, you need to make sure you don't have a long session. Don't assume that the same person is logged in now is the same person that logged in yesterday. No assumption. Data protection, encrypt your data, no plain text, please. And use secure storage on any platform that you're using. That is trusted by the platform. And continuous monitoring. So you want to monitor what is going to happen for your security for your mobile device. You need a live telemetry. Capture all the different attacks, capture all the different logs that you may encounter and try to address them. So another thing that we're going to get into is going to be, the next step is going to be the code. That's the mindset of shifting left in software development, which I'm pretty sure most of you or all of you are familiar with. The more you move your protection to the left, the less costlier it becomes. If you find something in development, that's way cheaper than when you find it in production. So, but then how can you do that? First thing first is, obviously, one of the mindset here is DevSecOps. And DevSecOps is not just a team. In many companies, it's an assumption that, okay, we have a DevOps team or DevSecOps team. It's not a responsibility only of one team. Every developer is responsible to making every single step of the pipeline secure. So if you look at the broader perspective here, we're going to go from when we are writing code. There are multiple tools that you can leverage for scanning your codes. CodeQL is going to be one of them. You may go and buy or purchase some of the products out on internet, like GitHub Advanced Security is going to be one of them. Until you go to the commit phase, where you can leverage your even pre-hooks to just run multiple checks before even something is getting commit, strip out the secrets, if any. Why would you want to commit first and then figure out, oh, I committed right now, I need to fix, and then need to fix the history of my Git as well? Because if you fix your code and commit again, that doesn't mean it's gone. It's in the story. So leverage those tools that is actually free under your control as developers, or encourage your developers to do so, your team, building pre-commit hooks, or using tools that prevent pushing these commits to wherever you want to push your code. For example, GitHub Advanced Security has a component called secret scanning, where it prevents your developers to push certain patterns. Well, it could be secrets, it could be personal numbers, or anything like that. It blocks pushing to the mainstream. So then, moving forward, when you are building, using different tools like SonarQube or anything else to scan your code, or build, test, then move on to the dependency scan. And that's where another strategy comes into play, which is the software bill of materials, or SBOM. Has anyone heard about that before? This. How many of you know what is this, or are doing that in your company? That's good. It's not many of you. And this is something that all of you should do in your company if you're building a software, especially a mobile application. For those who don't know what it is, well, I have an analogy for this. This looks like when you go and buy a pack of food, there's an ingredient behind this package, which says this food contains whatever. So obviously, you're right, you look at that ingredient, say, okay, it's fine, I can eat it. But you may look at the food, it looks nice, but then in the ingredient, there is something that you are allergic to. You're obviously not going to buy that. You don't want to kill yourself, unless you're crazy like me. So that's exactly the analogy it works for the software bill of materials, where you get the detail of your software composition. So what are the software version, the vendors, the license, things around that. And what is particularly important is on every build, you can analyze these reports that you receive, could be completely automated. And if anything has changed, you can reject the build or the pull request or whatever, until you really go into that dependency and make sure that it's safe. These are small steps, but it actually brings a lot of value to your build pipeline. it's not just also about security. Sometimes it's also about regulatory compliance. So sometimes a new version of a software may have a different license version. You're using that, you don't know. Someone has upgraded, and then you get into a problem, or your company. So it's just nice to double check things. Now that we went through the architecture strategies, we talked about that, then the next step is how to defend our application. So the first strategy that I want to talk about is the one that everyone talked about it today and yesterday. The runtime application self-protection, RASP, which this company that ran this conference has, to my opinion, the best out there right now for mobile applications. But I want you to think about RASP as a security move inside your application, because you can sometimes control things that comes from outside. But when you build your application, you have the binary, then you don't have a control anymore inside. The more control you can add there and ship your application, the better you can react to whatever happens at some times. So you know that RASP can detect multiple things like jailbreak or being on a simulator or debugger attachment and things like that. And the nice thing is that you need to have a strategy of the recovery. So what you need to do on the things that happen and what you need to do to recover that application in case anything happens in the runtime. So I'm not going to spend too much time on actually this one, the layers of the RASP for your application, because probably you've heard enough today from other speakers. But what I want to talk about is the next, where things has changed the last 2-3 years, the landscape of AI. So this was something that we have not thought about it 5 years ago. It was not a big thing, at least. But now it's kind of like a mainstream, because it's actually changing quite fast, where at some point you feel every hour you're outdated. Things are changing quite rapidly. So there are 5 different new vector attacks or attacks vectors that comes into place, like deepfake, we talked about it, or voice cloning. There are multiple examples. One of them is the gold pickaxe malware, which happened to the financial apps in, I think it was Vietnam and Thailand or somewhere, where what happens is that this malware could use the deepfake and the voice cloning to bypass the security and log into the accounts. And many millions of users were impacted by this malware, which is showing us that these things are critical. Some of them, you may not be able to resolve it right on the spot. Some of them might be a little bit cheaper to do. For example, the prompt injection, the model thieves. For example, the prompt injection is where you can control the input and output of the text that goes to these models, stripping out and make sure those texts are safe. Again, no assumption here, because the developers think that, oh, we're going to use this from whatever provider, this model, or it's an actually in-app model, then that means this is safe, right? Which is not. No assumptions. There's a term right now, which I want you to think about it when you walk away from this talk, is calling defending against, sorry, not this one. This is exactly what I mentioned, the layers of defending your apps with against AI. And this layer comes from, as we mentioned, like mitigation of prompts. So there are multiple things you can do here. You can like validate your input. You can make sure that your user prompt and system prompts that you write are treating differently. The user prompt are never gonna be trusted, while the system prompt that you write maybe. Always make sure for the prompts or for the models, give the least privilege to the model. And for critical and important sensitive accesses, always fall back to the manual behavior. So do not trust agents to do things on behalf of your user if it's too critical. Or another layer that you might think is the runtime model tampering. So the model that is actually running on the device is not the model that you probably have deployed to your application, build it with your app. So then model integrity checks becomes a critical point here if you have an in-app model. Making sure you're making your models obfuscated as well. It's not just your code, it's also your models. And again, always check for inputs. You can also think about the local data that you are storing, or it's compromised. Like you might have, again, an integrity check for the data that the model is getting accessed or needs to be stored somewhere into your storage. And then last one, which I want to mention here is, that's what we call it liveliness of detection, and that's version 2, where essentially it means some of the regular checks that we do have, especially the biometrics, blink of an eye or something, it doesn't work anymore because that can be deep-faked. But what you need to add is a layer more on top of that, where you add human behavioral gestures. How can I hold my phone? And that can be changed over time. For apps that requires such a level of security, you might need to think on a different layers. So you're building a layers of security over your AI into your application, even though many of us using the models API into your application, but some apps still uses the models in the app as well. So our friend from Cloudflare mentioned actually about their models and what they're doing for the AI. They have a new term called defensive AI, where they build a framework there, and essentially that means fighting against AIs by AIs. Let them fight. So there are tools already out there. As an example, at least from Microsoft, we have a tool for cloud that uses AI to detect anomalies and wrong or not wrong, like suspicious traffics by AI and fight against those. There are many of these tools out there as well that you can leverage for your application. So that's a superpower. We give this power to attackers to attack, but it's also in our hands. We can use them to defend those attacks. So, and then this one I will quickly move. How many of you actually using cross-platforms like React Native, Flutter for building apps? Not many of you. But with these cross-platform applications, frameworks, there are a little bit different challenges. They are targeting multi-platforms. So that means if you have a vulnerability, that may actually spread out to multiple of these platforms. If there is one issue right now that you might have in Android, well, if you write it in a cross-platform, that gets spreaded maybe into 2. So it's more responsibility to double-check on the security for the cross-platform application. So some of these like have a breach, like JavaScript breach on React Native for native code. You need to make sure these data that is transferring between your layers on top and the native layers, the bottom, is secure enough. All those principles, nothing, there's no assumption here. And in Flutter, for example, we have platform channel, where that communication happens between a Dart layer and a native layer. So to address, obviously, a couple of things, a very regular one that we do for native apps as well. We need to validate all of our platform channel communication. We need to make sure if the app is critical, you have a certificate pinning on both platforms. We need to make sure that you're using the secure storage libraries for these cross-platforms. And always validate your deep linkings as well as your runtime monitoring. So while they are cross-platforms, that doesn't mean they are safe by assumption. Okay, I'm going to move now to the next part where I want to just spend 5 minutes on that, and then we're done. I want to talk about the culture, the mindset, the shift of culture in your company. As I mentioned, thinking about security is not a responsibility of one team specifically. It is a responsibility of everyone. Everyone owns security. You need to invest time to change this mindset in your company. If it wasn't that important a couple of years ago, it is important today that everyone should be aware of that. For particularly the tech people, you're responsible of knowing different phases of building your software and make them secure. So you can do a couple of things here, just a couple of ideas that we've done or I've seen in different big enterprises. Use your leverage to build security champions program. Nominate people in your teams that they are a championship for security and always move forward. You can always make sure you have a continuous training. These guys for the panel mentioned about that. So you need to make sure the security learning is not only one-time thing, it's a continuous evaluation and reevaluation of the trainings. You need to make sure that there is no blame culture in your company for security issues. That will be a blocker. There is no blame on someone. Something happens, fine, we'll fix it, address it, we make sure we prevent it for next time. That's a different culture. And that actually enables people to be more proactive, more vocal about what is happening, try to be addressing the issue as fast as possible. And the last one, I guess it's something that you may resonate, matter, things that matters. Why do you want to know how many lines of code a developer has written? Just meet the time to remediation. How long does it take that we fix these issues? Measure those. Have a list of vulnerabilities in all of your repositories in your companies. There are many of these tools that can give you. And make sure you're following the trends for the security vulnerabilities in your company. A dashboard that can help you to see, is it increasing or decreasing? Have they solved the issue? Can we make a campaign? Can we have a week of security addressing in our company that people actually go and fix the security problems altogether? And finally, we have test coverage for code. We also have security test coverage. Doesn't need to be 100%, just like test coverage, but you need to have your static analysis tools. You need to have dynamic analysis tools. The SCA, the software composition tools, all of them are part of these testing coverage. So, I'm not going to explain this, but technically whatever I mentioned can be automated. This is just an example from one of our applications that every single step that I mentioned as a strategy is part of this and automated. You can check later, so that doesn't, and you don't need to look at it right now, it's too small. And last thing is, if you don't have a plan for your security, a good practice is make yours. 30, 60, 90 is a very typical one that you may have heard. What can you do in the first 30 days? What can you do in the next 60 days, and so on? So, for example, in the first 30 days, you may have the very top and important one, like create a foundation. Maybe generate software bill of materials and check that. Step by step at least you know the next 3 months we will have most of these steps implemented and automated. And with that said, my last word, security actually is not a one task, it's a continuous effort. You're never gonna get rid of security whatsoever. There's always something new. So keep an eye on what you're building. With that said, thank you very much.